Hi everyone, my name is Edwin Dande, CEO at Cytonn Investments. Now over the last couple of days we've had quite a bit of, I would call it noises around the brand, and whenever such a thing happens, of course we have to take a step back and speak to our clients, speak to our stakeholders, our staff members, and the goal is to try and communicate our context in terms of what's happening. Of course, you've seen quite a bit of noise in terms of people not able to redeem funds in the real estate funds. Remember, we have the real estate funds and we have the liquidity funds such as our money market fund where there is no issue at all. So you've had noises about people not being able to withdraw funds, and on the back of that noise, we also had a statement from CMA which attracted quite a bit of publicity from stakeholders and also the general public. So the purpose of this is just to explain the context of all that to interested parties. We have two kinds of products, but before I talk about these products, let me just give context of the products. You have investors on one side. These are people who are looking for a return and they have money to invest. On the other side, you have businesses that are looking for money to grow their businesses. To be able to bring these two together, the investors and people looking for money to finance their businesses, you have something called capital markets, and that is where we participate. We bring investors who want to get a return, and we take that money and invest in places that require funds. Now, capital markets is not just about investors and it's not just about businesses. When done well, when you finance these businesses, you grow the economy, you grow the standards of living, you create jobs, because when businesses are growing, the economy will grow. When the economy is growing, you have more people employed. When you have more people employed, it is increasing or improving the standards of life, because at the end of the day, what an ordinary Kenyan really wants is to pay their bills, whether it's to pay their rent, to pay their mortgage, to feed their family, to pay their hospital bills. All these things can only be done if people have jobs. Jobs are only possible when businesses are growing, and for businesses to grow, they need to be funded. And for them to be funded, they need to access the money from investors. So that is the field that we play in. Now, for us, we don't play in the entire capital markets business. We are more focused on getting money from investors and putting it in real estate, because we are real estate specialists. When we get money from investors, you can get the money in two ways. There's the regulated market. That is one of the markets, which is also called public market, and the regulator for that market is the Capital Markets Authority, and the relevant regulation or the relevant rules, that's the Capital Markets Act. So that is one market. There's also another market called the unregulated market or the private market. There's this perception that all capital markets activity ought to be regulated. That is false. There's a regulated market and there's also an unregulated market. If you go to the regulations, it's called Capital Market Securities Regulation, regulation number 21. It states exactly what you have to do to be able to fit into the category of unregulated. So one of the requirements, for example, is that the investment has to be at least 100,000. If you meet that category, you will then be considered to be offering a private product. So we have products in the regulated side, such as our Cytonn Money Market Fund, and we also have products on the unregulated side, such as the Cytonn High Yield Solutions. On the regulated side, there's no issue, because a lot of this investment is put in liquid, readily accessible funds such as bank deposits. But the unregulated side, a lot of the funds are put in real estate, such as our Cytonn High Yield Solution, which invests in 10 different projects. So a lot of people tend to confuse these products. Always ask yourself, when you're dealing with a brand, Does the brand offer both regulated and unregulated? What are the products on the regulated side? What are the products on the unregulated side? There's also a perception that if it's regulated, then it's safer than if it's unregulated. That is just a perception. The reality is, whether a fund is safe or not, you ought to look at what are the underlying assets, what are the risks that I'm taking. There are a lot of investments in the regulated space. If I might give, for example, those who invested in the Chase Bank bond, or those who invested in the Imperial Bank bond, these were regulated products, but when they ran into trouble, the investors walked away with zero. So just because it's regulated does not mean it is safe. There are cases where it is unregulated, but when you look at the underlying asset, if that product were to run into trouble, you have something to look to hold on to. So those are the two areas we play in: regulated and unregulated. CHYS is an unregulated product. On the regulated side, we have Cytonn Money Market Fund, and we also have another one called CHYF, not to be confused with CHYS.